So if you're an experienced reptile keeper, this video is probably not for you. But stick around because I do have some stuff for you later on. If you're sort of cresting beginner and moving into intermediate territory, then yes, this is the video for you.
Just you?
You. I know you've considered buying a Savannah Monitor. I mean, they're so cool. You went into a pet shop and you're like, oh, that's super cool. And then you Googled it, right? And then you found out, oh, geez, they get kind of big, but not too big. But because they're not too big, you could probably handle one because, you know, you have experience with a bearded dragon and they're not exactly small lizards. Savannah Monitors are just a little bit bigger than that. So naturally, it's just the next step. I would discourage that. Full transparency, I do own a Savannah Monitor. His name is Boss. You can check him out in my latest reptile collection video. I love him. He's honestly one of my favorite animals to hang out with, to interact with. He's super smart and just all around super fun to be around.
But that does not mean that I should have bought him.
This video is basically going to tell you why you probably shouldn't buy a Savannah Monitor. Part 1 is going to be why Savannah Monitors don't make good pets and why you probably shouldn't buy one. And part 2 is going to be what to do if you decide to buy a Savannah Monitor without heeding the information of part 1. Imports are animals that are caught in the wild in their respective habitats and then shipped out to the countries of distribution. So in Savannah Monitor's case, juvenile animals are collected from several countries in West Africa, mainly Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, and then they are exported worldwide. Imports are bad because they have a bunch of issues that captive bred do not have. For example, imports generally have parasites like ticks or mites. Ticks are a pain to deal with because you have to grab them and extract them off of your lizard, which is an incredibly stressful and painful experience for your lizard. I did that to Bosk when I got him. He had about 4 ticks on him because he came from the wild. And in the wild, they're not under the microscope of care that they have here, which means that parasites get to them. It happens to a majority of animals that are caught in the wild.
The Wild, coming soon to Disney DVD.
There's also the problem with mites, which are much more common in the reptile hobby. This comes from wild-caught animals too. And what happens with mites is they're these tiny, tiny little bugs that you really don't see. And what they do is they crawl around on your animal and they eat its insides and they eat its outsides. And eventually they multiply so heavily that your animal just dies. I was housing a rosy boa that I adopted from someone, and that rosy boa was kept in very, very abysmal conditions. And those dirty conditions essentially allowed these mites to flourish. They killed my rosy boa, they spread my blue-tongued skink, they killed my blue-tongued skink, and then they spread to my bearded dragon, killed 3 of my reptiles. I had to sanitize and quarantine, get rid of all the substrate from all my other reptiles. It's a pain to deal with. Oftentimes they will have internal parasites, like a tapeworm or the like.
Parasites are going to take away the nutrition from Bonobo when she's eating. So when the food enters her body that she eats, those parasites would then take all that nutrition and breed inside of her.
And they're overall just not going to be very healthy. Additionally, wild-caught animals are generally incredibly difficult to handle. They have really bad temperaments. They don't want to be with you. Of course, there are exceptions to this. But you might be thinking to yourself, oh, well, this should be all the more reason to get that animal. You know, if you see an animal that's struggling, if you see one that's unhealthy, a lot of our pet keeper instincts are to instantly gravitate towards that animal and sort of white knight ourselves and save it from dying. And I think that that is actually a very admirable thing to do. In the case of Savannah Monitors, though, it's better to just leave that animal be, because the second you buy that one animal, 100 more next breeding season are just going to take its place. The more you buy wild-caught animals that have severe health problems, the more you incentivize to just continue the cycle that's unsustainable. And I say unsustainable, but in reality, Savannah Monitors are of least concern in the wild. But that doesn't mean that we should be killing tens of thousands of babies every single year just because they look cool in pet stores. And look, importing wild-caught animals is not always a bad thing. In 1994, crested geckos, which are one of the most popular animals in the pet trade, were basically extinct, but a bunch of scientists found some. They exported these wild-caught animals into labs. They established breeding colonies, and now it's one of the most prolific and popular pets in the pet trade, and the wild population is slowly coming back. And that's all the good work we did in 26 years. But we've been keeping Savannah monitors for a century, and we don't know how to take care of them, and we definitely don't know how to breed them. There are no quarantine or health inspections required for their entry in the United States, which means they can carry all the internal and external parasites they want. And these animals are often sold as captive born or farm bred or farm ranched or whatever. But what essentially happens is that pregnant females are collected, their eggs are essentially hatched.
Her eggs.
Yeah.
Her female lady eggs. And so she has
on these farms in Africa, and then the babies are just shipped out to the United States. That's still a wild caught and wild animal, basically. And then even worse, sometimes what they'll do is a lot of these Savannah Monitor farms is they'll just stake off large plots of land and then collect a bunch of Savannah Monitors and just set them free. So these are technically still wild animals living in an enclosed area. They'll lay their eggs in very specific locations, and then the farmers and ranchers will go in and just collect all the babies once they hatch. They can technically sell them as captive born. Captive bred animals like bearded dragons, they mate in captivity and they breed and lay eggs in captivity, which means that is a captive born animal. An animal that's collected because its mother was wild and pregnant,
That's not captive bred, unfortunately.
which means that these animals, even though they are captive born and or farm bred, are still going to have all the exact same problems that wild caught animals do. There are exceptions to this, but you don't want to take your chances and you don't want to incentivize this sort of culture. Another one of the reasons why Savannah Monitors don't make great pets is their care requirements. And I think Clint's Reptiles actually sums this up very articulately.
There's two problems with the Savannahs. One is that we don't know exactly what they need, and the second is we don't even provide what we know they need. When you buy a $30 lizard, you're just not prepared to give it a room in your house and $100 worth of insects every few weeks.
I think in addition to this, there are two primary culprits. The first is more conceptual, it's called confirmation bias. And the second is just the reptile and monitor community writ large. So confirmation bias, also known as selective exposure theory, is basically states that individuals have a tendency to favor information which reinforces their pre-existing views while avoiding contradictory information. New and intermediate keepers who have not kept monitors, specifically Savannah monitors before, have these preconceived notions about Savannah monitors based on what they know about other lizards and based on things that they see like on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, what have you. Oh, like here's a couple videos of a Savannah monitor ripping the head off of a mouse and giving it a death roll.
That probably means that they can eat mice as a staple of their diet.
Oh, my local pet store gives canned cat food to its monitors there. That probably means that Savannah monitors can eat cat food as a staple. Oh, here's a monitor in a 20-gallon enclosure with just wood chips. That probably means that a Savannah monitor can live in an aquarium as long as it's the appropriate size with wood chips for the rest of its life.
My name is Jeff.
All three of these claims could not be farther from the truth, and Savannah monitor care that we've decided on isn't 100% effective. There is a very clear-cut guide on how to care for Savannah monitors, which is a very, very difficult standard to uphold for a lizard that only costs $30. So the second reason under care that's a little bit less conceptual is just the community as a whole. I love the reptile community. I think one of the things I love the most about it is just how passionate everyone is. But the problem is this makes it very inaccessible to new keepers because monitors have a sort of their own subsect community amongst the broader reptile community. Monitors generally have very specific care requirements. They're not pets that people usually just keep casually. Like you don't casually decide that you're just gonna get a black throat monitor or a water monitor because even for new keepers, that's unreasonable. But the reason that this video exists is because there are people that do casually decide to get Savannah monitor. When you get a Savannah monitor, hopefully, you do a couple of these things, right? You go online, you look at care sheet, you go on YouTube, you look at care videos, or you get on Savannah Monitor community forums and you ask experienced keepers for help. This is where the issues set in. There was a group I was in a while back just called the Savannah Monitor group, and the amount of toxicity in that group was so high that from that group was spawned a second one called the non-judgmental Savannah Monitor group. And one of the reasons for this is because monitor keepers in general are so dedicated to the craft of keeping monitors. When you have people come in saying like, hey, I just bought a Savannah monitor, here it is in its 10-gallon tank, how do I take care of it? So what a lot of people tend to do is they attack these new keepers instead of being helpful and understanding. So why is this important? Well, because if you have a ton of dudes that look like this, that are all telling you you're stupid and you shouldn't have the reptile that you spent all this time wanting to get, then you're gonna have a tendency not to listen to these types of people. If they're screaming at you and calling you stupid, instead of accepting that you're stupid, you're gonna say, oh no, they're stupid, I know what I'm doing, I'm just gonna do it my way. What sucks is that as rude and as sort of unwelcoming as a lot of these people are, they're kind of right. They've been keeping monitors for so long, they have it down to a science. But the inaccessibility of the community makes it so that I don't want to learn any new information. I just simply want to be treated like a human being. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is if you do decide to get a Savannah monitor, there are some things that you should do. First of all, when it comes to care, just if it wasn't apparent already, please do your research. Use numerous different sources. I would primarily default to the care guides and care files that the Savannah Monitor group on Facebook uses. I know I spent a lot of time trashing their rudeness and all that kind of stuff, but the group has evolved a little bit since then. You don't even really have to interact with the keepers. Just follow the guides and the files that are in that group to the T. Secondly, as far as acquisition, look on animal shelters and go on Craigslist to find an animal. So if you're going to get one, don't support the pet trade, don't support imports and exports, just get one that is being surrendered and give it a new home, since now you know how to take care of it properly, you'll do a better job than the previous owners. If you give them proper care, they'll survive for a good amount of time. Again, it's not as long as many other animals. Still, the best care we have out there isn't 100% effective, but it's the best we can do given the situation that we have. Thanks for watching this video. I know this one probably wasn't as funny as my previous ones. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. If you haven't already, if you enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. And additionally, it just takes one click to subscribe, so please do that. Please. For more videos in the future.